Okay, so welcome to Spiritual Therapy for the Aquarian Age. My name is Sheena, and this is my sister, Imesia, of Move with Imesia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of
I'm
course.
happy to be here.
Yeah. I wanted to have the conversation with you as like the second. So obviously, after telling my story and speaking about how faith and spirituality plays into my story, I wanted you to be like the first person, technically, that I'm gonna like share, because our stories are so interconnected, of course, as sisters, but also too, there are so many people, siblings, that, you know, their lives kind of diverge and ours tends to, you know, keep, yeah, overlapping. Yeah. So, and then of course, you know, we've started, it's interesting now to think about, before I get into the questions, to think about 5 years ago, we started with this idea of having a spiritual healing retreat.
Right.
And I think we were so ahead of our time at that time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't even make sense.
It didn't even make sense.
I mean, it made sense, but yeah.
People weren't ready.
Yeah, we didn't know who it was for or why exactly.
Well, I think we wanted it to be for Black women specifically, but feeling like maybe, you know, there's so much complexity around that.
Right.
For whatever reason at that time.
Yeah.
And it feels like now it's something that would be more accepted, or people are can see the alignment between their wellness and their spiritual health, or their you know, spiritual wellness, if you want to say. So besides just being sisters, we're also business partners. And yeah, I think it's so important for me to have this conversation with you and other family members, but starting with you, you know? So that being said, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Who are you? So tell me a little bit about your identity. So whether that means race or sex or gender, your approximate age, the decade, your ethnic background, ancestral background, whatever you feel, the whole thing, whatever you feel to share.
Who am I? Who am I? Well, okay. So I think first of all, I think what I identify with initially, because I think, okay, so I think what I identify with initially is this idea that I am a spirit being having this human experience, you know, so I'm like this entity that I believe has been around and has now here, you know, you and I talk about like this idea of the fact that we've always been sisters, or we've always been connected, or, you know, so I think initially that's kind of what I feel like there's, and even as I sit out here and in, you know, our parents' backyard, and I'm like in this oasis and I'm surrounded by all this nature and these flowers and the sky, and, you know, I realize that there's like an interconnectedness. So but at the moment I'm here as Imesia Ewan. I am a Black woman. I am a daughter and a sister, and someone I think who's come here to do healing work and to do work of service, and you know, I realize that I'm here to be of service. I am a mother. So there's a complexity, and there's yeah, all of those things. Yeah. Could go on, but I think I'll leave it there.
Right on. How are you known? So what do you do in your everyday life do you consider it your vocation or your calling? Yeah, well, I'll leave those there with you.
Say that again.
So what do you do in your everyday life, or what do you do in your everyday? And do you consider it your vocation or your calling?
What do I do in my everyday? I think at a base level, what I do in my everyday is live that value of being in service. So being of service in some way, shape, or form, or the act of service towards something that I believe has um, an impact on for the good. You know. So say the question again.
Yeah. What do you do in your everyday, and do you consider it your vocation or your calling?
Yeah, and so I do consider it my vocation and my calling. I think that I think with a lot of people now, and I think just for myself, I've become a little bit clear in the depth of my calling and how I can be of greater service or expanded service or um, uh, yeah, becoming more of the person or more of the person who's able to be in service to the world. Does that make sense?
Mm.
To give in a greater way, or a more profound way, or a way that makes a greater impact. So really specifically, I try to be of support to people. In my vocation, you know, I work in the area, I believe, of people's livelihood, how they're perceived, um, enhancing people's perceptions of their own skill set and their own value. Um, just really trying to like create transformation in people in whatever way I can through my skill set, I guess. Yeah.
Right on. What is your skill set?
So coaching, uh, specifically, it could be like life coaching, you know, personal development coaching, who you are in the world, who do you want to show up as, how can you be of more service, how can you um, be bigger and brighter and lighter and putting yourself out there. So that piece, but also really specifically around, like I said, livelihood. So the act of supporting people with their career goals, creating strategies around how they get to where they want to be, whether that is titles on a paper or on a more personal level, just how they want to be of service, you know, and how they can expand themselves and expand their careers. And then the nitty gritties of all that. So the resumes and the things that you put on paper, how you sell yourself in an interview, um, how you strategize through the first few months of a new job, you know, maybe even, you know, in the current climate, being a person of color, being a Black person, being a Black woman. I've had that experience, and, you know, working in an all, I would say all, but predominantly male engineering company where where you have to kind of ensure that you're presenting yourself with the image that and how you want to be perceived, you know, whether that's confident, strong, educated, talented, um, approachable, you know, knowledgeable, strong. So yeah, trying to sort of create that opportunity for people to grow, and for me to support them with that.
Right on. Awesome. What have you done in your life that you're most proud of?
My son, And I think that's from not, a personal development perspective, because I think it really just took a lot for me to get there, physically, mentally. Yeah, just, yeah. I think there were some points that I didn't think that that was possible, and had kind of accepted that. And that was totally okay. And then, yeah, and then it happened. So yeah, so I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of enduring the process, I guess. And not just the 9-month process, but the process of like, yeah, getting there.
That commitment, that ongoing commitment.
Mm-hmm. Working through like yeah.
The learnings.
Yeah, and applying the learnings, and accepting,
Accepting change.
I think, we use the term a lot, like it is what it is, but I think accepting that things are as they are, and they're perfect as they are, in whatever moment that you're in. Like, it is exactly where you're supposed to be, and not like, that yogic sort of philosophy of not grasping at things, but this idea of like this contentment and, joy with exactly what's happening, because exactly what's happening is exactly what should be happening. And allowing myself to kind of return to that state all the time, and then that being like a catalyst for like, that continued feeling of enjoyment and contentment, and like bringing that in, and then that filling myself up of like that energy and that feeling, was like real work. So like that's kind of what I mean about even the physical, or like my eating and hormonal changes, and yeah, that all of that process, the being willing to be vulnerable to the process, and to surrender to the process of even just going through like the pregnancy piece, the fears. And so like all of that was really a development opportunity, and development to kind of get to the joy and the bliss of bringing a life into the world. So, and having being given this responsibility. So yeah.
Yay, I love that. It feels very full, and acceptance of the full.
Yeah.
I think recently, personally speaking, I know it's not just me, but and I think we had talked about it too, but having this, at least, I don't know if it's, I'm sure the Black Lives Matter movement most recently has had like a hand in it, but I think probably starting with COVID, or even before that, having this awareness of the complexity of holding, the fullness of holding the complexity of all of everything, all of life, all of the emotions, all of the experiences and responses and feelings, and like you said, to your point, like knowing, like not letting it be okay, but being at peace with where we're at, that gives me some ease. So thanks for sharing that. Let's see. What did you learn? Actually, let's go back. How and where did you first learn about faith and spirituality?
I think spirituality, I think just, growing to church, you and I, that idea, that concept that there was something like not here, like intangible, like we're all going to this place and we're talking about this person that we don't ever see. It's like the Pokeroo,
Canadian reference, but anyway.
Oh, sorry.
No, I love it. I
You
used to love
know,
potpourri too, so maybe that says something about me.
you know, the just this idea that like it was yeah, that you go and you talk about this person that you never see, and the spirit, the idea of like spirit, that is outside of yourself, that's intangible, that is somewhere up there, and faith came much later, but spirituality was kind of like early on, but was more of like the religion of it and the institution of it than the idea of real spirituality, you know. But it was all like it was all fun, like, you know, it was all fun because, you know, you dress up, you know, as a kid, like that experience of it, it was all fun. You dress up and you go and you see people and everyone has books and like they're singing and it's like, okay, well, we'll do this. And but not really any real attachment to like what it really meant until like maybe confirmation, which came later, I think, you know, 12, 13. More education about book, and Bible and what that meant. And so there was more like understanding that there's something deeper, there's something to that is holding us all. There's a greater power. There's something that has created us. There is something that we can look to for guidance and for direction, and so that idea started to form. And okay, that's cool, but like again, not something that you're really like picking up, or it was still very institutional. You know, it was still very like we go to this place and we do this thing. But there was community in it, so there was that like good part of it. You know, when I think about like Eden, you know, where we grew up in Mississauga, good memories of that. When I think about St. Paul's, like the church that we went to in Milton in our kind of our adolescent years, good memories of that. Or even earlier than adolescent years, but good memories of that. And then uh, and then it kind of got lost on me.
When?
Teenage years.
The religion piece specifically, or
the spirituality and faith piece, just the yeah, and or maybe it was like the institution of it, and so like kind of like the baby went out with the bathwater, like, you know, we kind of got into, or I kind of got more into like my own self or life or whatever, you know, high school, all the complexities that came with that, not really aligning myself or supporting myself with any that I can remember, that with any kind of idea of spirituality and faith that I can really remember. Not on like a deep level. Not really. Other than the thing that, again, that institutional idea of it, until I went to university, and then I met someone who was very religious. Actually, even before that, even before the relationship I'm kind of referring to, even before that, I met someone who was very religious in their own, in a different
representation.
religious sort of denomination that I grew up with, and kind of opened my eyes to the idea of like what it meant to practice spirituality and faith.
What was their faith?
Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
So they didn't practice, right? So there wasn't, I shouldn't say they didn't practice. There wasn't an idea of celebrate, or like, you know, that going to church idea, that institutional piece.
Right.
Or celebrating, I think, you know, hopefully I'm not confusing that. Shout out to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Come and talk. But yeah, so anyway, so it kind of like had me like just represented with the idea of like how what practices, what are we practicing, or how do we practice spirituality, how do we practice faith. And it kind of got me thinking more about the idea of like activism in a sense, or of activism in the sense of that looks like sort of like missionary work or support, or just getting out there in communities and like doing things that support the well-being of the community. And that being an act of spirituality in a sense. So anyway, so those kind of thoughts kind of sort of like percolating and coming up, and I started going back to church, away from home, you know, like, so no like drive from like the parental, you know, thing coming down saying you should go to church, but it was sort of like a self-initiated thing with this person I met. So so that was happening. And then after that, I met someone else who was also very religious, in a different sort of denomination from my own, you know, quite devout. And
they were Baptist, right? Baptist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Southern, you know. So it also kind of opened my eyes to practicing spirituality, and kind of gave me a greater concept of this faith thing, of like this belief in something before you see it come to pass, you know, or envisioning something but not really understanding where it fits in the context of your life right now. But it's kind of like, oh, it's something that's being presented to me to maybe do something with or act upon, but it makes absolutely no sense. Like if you build it, it will come, sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that was maybe, so we're talking like, what, 2002, 2000.
Beginning of, or 3-ish, kind of.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So, and I'm young, and I'm like early 20s. And so this is all kind of like expanding now, and really allowing me to kind of build my own like ideas of like what it meant, what spirituality and faith meant, which was exciting. But I didn't really see it at the time. Now I'm looking back, oh, that was exciting. But at the time I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like, all these things are happening. I'm meeting these people. I'm challenging the things I've thought about. I'm reinventing new things. I'm creating new habits on my own, new processes. So yeah, spirituality and faith in my early 20s starts to like develop as like this real construct, redevelop as this real construct based on this like Christian upbringing, you know, very homogeneous white, you know, church community. Not really kind of seeing myself, if I were to talk about that too, as a, like in the community, as, but like more of like, like the exotic part of the community, or rather than being a part of it, the whole. Kind of like something that kind of stands over here, and it's like, oh, that's really cool, like look what we have like as a part of our group. You know, like, oh, we have llamas in our zoo, like it's really cool. It's not bad to say. But again, not in a bad way, because it's not, I want to like to make this clear, it wasn't like in a bad way, like I felt like that at the time. I don't have bad memories of it or bad feelings of it. When I think about it now with a different lens, I look at it like that, you know, like, oh, it was that, you know. But at the time it was like, oh, you know, I love my little hats, and they love my little hats, and they love my little shoes and my little socks that I used to wear. So anyway, so all that to say, like, this new construct is coming with this underpinning of like that sort of foundation.
Does that expression still resonate for you?
What's that?
The faith and spirituality piece that you first learned about, you know? Because it seems like you still hold like a lot of respect and value there.
I hold, I hold respect and value for the dedication that and the steadfastness that is shown to what I hope is praise and worship and gratitude. The experience of like, that's how I've kind of come to like interpret it, like this experience of coming together as a community, as like a sangha almost, to like give praise, and that collective voice is stronger and maybe more greatly heard. And I would hope, I would trust that the voice of that collective community is aligned and focused and, inclusive and, and all of those things, because I really do believe that kind of work and that kind of voice in a collective sense is really what changes the world. What generates that feeling of like positive energy or that high positive vibration that incites change in people or wanting to change or being heard across the world. I don't know, crazy, but things like that. So so that's kind of what I've kind of like I don't want to say reframed, but like kind of reframed what that value is, like why I hold value in that. That experience that we've had of like singing in choirs and that like collective like energy that you can feel of being a one voice in a large group. So it's that same sensation that comes from being in community with like-minded folk towards a common like positive purpose.
I love it. Was there anything missing in what you learned about faith and spirituality when you were younger? And I think you were starting to go here, but
yeah, I think it's this the whole I think it's the container that holds everything.
Tell me more.
That was what
Physical container or
no, like the intangible, like non-physical container. Because I think it's not the physical container. So not the institution, not the church, not the body, not the, it's the spirit that was kind of the piece that was missing. That became more clear. You know what I mean? I think spirituality and faith up until that point had been missing the spirit, had been missing, and what I had gotten
structure.
I had gotten the body.
Right.
I
love that.
The structure, the institution, the concepts, the education, but the and the tests because I think spirituality and faith starts to like really hit the road, like the rubber hits the road when the tests start to come.
Question.
So that's a little bit of what I think was maybe missing that I started to acquire, was that piece.
That belief in spirit, or your ability to access that intangible thing?
I think it's both, because I think one kind of leads into the other. I think there's the second one of like the intangible, and then it's like once you have the experience of the intangible becoming tangible, then you develop this that strengthens your belief, you
Right.
know, or has you like turn the page, or like, yeah, strengthens your belief in the faith, I think, through the tests, you know.
When your faith has been shaken, what helps you?
Getting grounded, getting connected to the body. So that's for me, that's why yoga is a healing practice. Because my movement practice allows me to be present in the moment and not be like all around in the maze.
And it'll be almost 8 years this October, right? That you got your level 1
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. It's crazy. Such a cycle, but yeah.
Right on. That's something that I feel like I personally need to learn more of. That how to access the movement piece more readily, you know. And so for me, you've been an example of what that looks like. So I just want to put that out there. How is faith different from spirituality?
I think that spirituality is the sort of I don't say the construct, but sort of spirituality is sort of like the construct in a sense, for lack of a better word. Yeah, like the framework a little bit. And then the faith is like how you work within that framework a little bit. That trust piece of like, how do I move through this situation? How do I act? What do I say? You know, they're almost like that, like a little bit of that, like guidepost. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense? I know I sometimes speak very like vague. And I'm like,
sometimes you are cryptic, but I'll get it out.
really get it out. Okay.
So, and in saying that, because I have to this specific point follow-up questions. What does faith look like for you, and what does spirituality look like for you?
The spirituality can look like the breath in the body. You know, as kind of someone who works in movement and yoga instructor, the breath in the body is like an example of spirituality or spirit. I love talking about breath because it's like, I think that, well, spirit is breath and breath is spirit. So there's that. There's the, like, as I said outside, like the wind blowing through the trees. Yeah. And then faith is my ability to breathe through this sound that's like coming up in the background.
Right? I'm like, what is that?
And trusting that it will cease.
Right? Help me breathe.
Very soon. And then it will not continue to be destructive.
Always something. Yeah, it's okay. We're okay. So spirituality for you, just recapping, is breath. And it's funny, yeah, when you had said that, I was like, yes, I know where she's going. And yeah, it gives this greater understanding how we all have, one, we're all spirits, yes, but we all have like the ability to tap into spirituality within ourselves.
Exactly.
Experience.
Exactly. Exactly. It's yeah, it's something that we all can access. And it's something, I think what's interesting, it's something that we're already always doing. So like it's like that experience of, or that awareness of like, what are we continuously calling in, you know? And that's how spirituality and faith become so intertwined and can kind of like we get layered on top of each other, because there is this like, what are you calling in, and then this faith of like of this feeling of like of trusting that the universe has good things for me, that 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 you are rooted in love, that that the people that you surround yourself with are that exhibit good vibes, and that you find alignment in the people that you're around. And so like when you operate with that level of like vibration, the spirit like kind of responds to that, so like spirituality and faith are so layered on top of each other and interconnected, and they kind of get like compounded as like, and that's why, yeah, I like the question around like spirituality and faith and how they work together.
Thank you. How has your faith changed and or deepened? And do you mind sharing why that change occurred?
Um, yeah, can you ask me the question again?
Yeah. How has your faith changed or deepened? Not your spirituality, your faith. And do you mind sharing why that change occurred?
So I think for me, um, the word faith also is sort of like goes along the word along with the word trust. Like there's like this, there's a great similarity for me. So I think coming to this realization, I recently turned 40, done, we've done quite a bit of healing work. We've come to awareness around a lot of things. And I think it's starting to come full circle in the sense of your story and everything that has happened to you has been for a reason, and has charted you through this path for a reason. And it is because of all the things that we have gone through that we are who we are, and that we're able to do the work that we do and touch the people that we do, and all of that was sort of already sort of charted, and so specifically, when I think about faith and I think about my experience with childhood sexual abuse, and with someone in our family, our half brother that we trusted, and for a long time, that experience being something that was in the dark and accompanied with feelings of shame and distrust, and not
Others,
hmm,
of self and others,
of
or
self and others. Not wanting to, we talked about acceptance, not wanting to accept that this is part of the whole, not knowing that it is part of, not even having any awareness. So, we talk about like in my early 20s, starting to have this concept of like starting to reconstruct this idea of like spirituality and faith, then starting, not even really, like just starting to like pinpoint like random, if my mind goes to like those data charts with all the dots everywhere, and you're like, I don't know how these connect. Like, I don't know what's going on, but like all these like little dots happening in my head around.
pause you for a sec. You know that meme with the guy and he's like, he has the chart and his eyes are like this and he's like trying to explain like all the things. That's the image that I get.
Like exactly. So knowing that this is part of my experience, knowing that it's a dot on the chart, but not knowing, and up until that point, having very little faith that it had a purpose or that there was a reason for it. And so wanting to almost like cut off a part of myself because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, there's no space for this, there's no purpose for it. Like, it's like an extra finger. Like, what do I need that for?
Let's just not even go there. Like, we don't need to think about it.
Right. So yeah, but then like that's where the spirituality part comes in. It's like, okay, there's a construct that I know that is supposed to hold me up and that I can go to for guidance, and that like that constructual idea of like there's something that to support me. So whether that's construct like tangible or like or otherwise. So yeah, say the question again.
Yeah. Has your faith changed or deepened? And do you mind sharing why that change occurred?
Yeah, so it has deepened. And why has that change deepened? I think it hasn't been, when I think about it, like looking back at the last, like say 8 or 10 years, it hasn't been quick. It hasn't been easy. It's not something that happened overnight. It wasn't like we turned on a light switch and we're like, oh,
I'm faithful.
It's going back to process. It's sort of staying like faithful to the process. And I think that's sort of like what I've like through the last 8 to 10 years of like, when I think about it specifically. So I came out to my sister, about this experience that I had with abuse. When was that? 2012.
2012, May of 2012. Could have even been April, but yeah.
Right? All of the events that have happened on that spectrum, that timeline between 2012 and 2020. And the not knowing where the dot connects to the rest of my life, what the purpose, specifically, like what the purpose of that incident was. How is it relevant? How is it serving me? How can it serve me? How can I use it? How should I be using it? How am I being called to use it? All started to come together between that period and now. And it's only like now looking back at the last period of time where I could say that there has been, I have to have acted in faith, you know?
Even though you didn't know that's what you were doing.
Even then, I didn't know that's what I was doing, you know? I think over the last few years, and actually maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I did know that's what I was doing, but you know, intuitively you do something because it's kind of like how, like, it's your foundation. It's like how, like, what you know, it's kind of like innately what you're called to do. I think it's a bit of that, of sort of intuitively like just doing things to stay in faith. Whether that's for you, like, you know, the Reiki and tarot, or like movement, or, you know, trying to be in service, or karma, of just trying to keep doing the work of like unfolding and uncovering, not shying away, not resisting, continuing to have conversations that are difficult, talking, sharing, speaking up, you know. I think those are all examples of like spirituality and faith, but faith and just like intuition, like the more that you practice faith, the deeper it becomes, you know, because it only creates more evidence for the fact like I'm blessed and fucking protected. Like, did you see like what happened? You know what I mean? Like, and it only starts to create more evidence for that belief. You know, like the practice of spirituality creates more evidence for your faith. So yeah, so all of that, you know, really having that experience become more a bigger, more prominent dot on the graph of my life, and now clear connections between that and other things where I can make use of that. Yeah.
I love that. Do you speak about your faith and spirituality? Why or why not?
I don't speak about it. Well, I think maybe I speak more about it in the last couple of years, because I've become more comfortable, not just with other people's acceptance of it, but my acceptance of it within myself, and not even just my acceptance of it, but my understanding of what it is for me. So I didn't really feel like I could speak about it because I really didn't understand what it meant for me and what it was for me and how I was practicing it. And so I didn't really feel like confident in like talking about it. Now I can I talk about it more, to the point that someone even the other day at work, like when I had my loss the other month, she had sent me like a note of condolence and said that, you know, you've talked about your faith a few times, you know, in conversations. And so I know that's something that you'll continue to rely on during this time. And I was like a little, I'm like, I have? Like, when did I talk about faith?
When did I talk about that?
Yeah, like, did I say that? You know, so I guess I do. More than not really consciously.
Yeah. More than you realize.
More than I realize, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I know that I do, but maybe I do more, more than I realize, I guess. Was that answered?
Yeah, definitely. To me, I think, because I would align with that totally. I feel like you embody it more, your faith. And so it's just a natural part of your being. And so why would you not talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Last couple questions. What are your go-to tools in your spiritual toolbox?
Writing, movement, not just yoga. It could be just walking.
Dance.
Dance, exactly. Yeah, dance is a good one. Just, you know, like connecting with music, like, you know, things that I feel are grounding, like music, connecting to like the beat of the body, the rhythm in the body, the bass of music. Yeah, so it could be listening to music, singing music, dancing to music. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. And being in nature. In nature too.
What is next up for you in this realm of learning, spirituality, faith, and self-development?
I think broadly, self-expression, like more self-expression, more, I think clarity in my self-expression around like who I am, why I'm here, and who I'm here to serve. So there's clarity for me around that, and what kind of conversations I want to be having. And, you know, so this is one of them. So I'm glad to be here. Yeah. And I applaud you for really starting this conversation in this forum, and using this platform of One People to do so.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
So last question. If you could share a message about faith, what would it be?
That it is a practice. Don't expect the fruit to come overnight, to bear overnight, but it will bear. And it may not be in the season or time you want, but you have faith that it will bear. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You just use saying the fruit will bear. I'm like, we're so Jamaican, yeah. I love Anyway. That's hilarious. I love it, and I love you.
I love you.
Sister. I'm blessed. We're blessed.
You're blessed.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, so I will end there. I didn't note at the beginning that today is July the 14th. We're just finishing at 10 to 2 in the afternoon. And because I didn't do it at the beginning, I'd like to just briefly acknowledge the land, the Indigenous caretakers and ancestors of Toronto, but across Canada, Turtle Island, and across the globe. The Indigenous peoples all over the world have and continue to teach us their ways of knowing and being, whether that's in Jamaica or Canada or any other country. And so I want to honor those that have done the work and continue to do the work and lead us so honestly and humbly. And we just should all feel blessed to have access to the resources of Mother Gaia and to treat her with the respect that she is due. So, yeah, that's it. Another episode done. Thank you. I love you.
Great. I love you too.